High praise. That is what the Georgia guys in this upcoming NFL draft are getting, particularly the ones that are projected to be first rounders. Jalen Walker, Mykel Williams, Malachi Starks. Hey, I know some of y'all don't like hearing about the NFL. Stick around and listen to what's going on with the former Dogs who are about to be going to the NFL here in just a few weeks. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post, Todd McShay of The Ringer, formerly of ESPN, longtime NFL draft analyst, former NFL scout, former college quarterback, I think at Richmond. Todd McShay, he said something pretty interesting about Mykel Williams a few weeks ago, and then he said something about Jalen Walker just the other day. And it's interesting. With Mykel Williams, he said, bet on, this was a message to GMs, a message to scouts and NFL organizations. With Mykel Williams, he said, bet on his traits. The production may not be there, the injury history may be there, but what he has that is undeniable are traits. And we're talking about a 6'5", 260-pound guy with some of the longest arms you'll ever see. He looks like Trayvon Walker, reincarnated Trayvon Walker, former number one overall pick in that 2022 NFL draft. Similar thing. His production wasn't necessarily there, but he was a winner, and he had the traits, and he had the mentality. That's what you get with Mykel Williams. What he most recently said about Jalen Walker the other day that I found to be really interesting was, and to me, this is high praise for Georgia, the program, to me. And I'm going to bring up some other examples that I can remember off the top of my head where other people within the league are just super complimentary of what Georgia has going on as a program and as an NFL pipeline. But what he said about Jalen Walker was he was talking to some scouts, and he thinks, what he's hearing is that people are starting to just drool over Jalen Walker. And it's not just because of what you're seeing when you're watching the film with Jalen Walker. So what does that mean? He said that there's one guy that told him in the NFL, like in an NFL front office, that said, not only do I get the tape I see from Jalen Walker, but I get Jalen Walker in the building. Something that Kirby has talked about a lot this year, and by this year I mean 2025 in the spring, is the type of players that he wants. Not the type of football players he wants, like how fast you are, what's your vertical, but the type of people that these football players are. Jalen Walker, I don't know what Kirby's ranking of favorite football player is. I don't know what Kirby's ranking of leaders on Georgia's team is, but I'd be surprised if Jalen Walker is not pretty high up there on his list. Mature, well-spoken, cares about Georgia, cares about winning, has an insane work ethic, has the compete and the fire that he's been asking for all spring practice. Jalen Walker embodies that. Guys like Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Trayvon Walker, guys like that embodied that. And those players are successful in the NFL right now. Jalen Walker is one of those guys that is up next and embodies what Kirby Smart wants in his football program when he's recruiting and when he's trying to build a roster and get that all together. So it's interesting to me that, well, not interesting. It's really, actually, it's just not surprising at all. But the scouts, the GMs, the coaches that are meeting with Jalen Walker, they're not just falling in love with what he did on the football field for Georgia, but they're falling in love with the type of person he is. And you want that in your building. Full disclosure. Obviously, I'm very close to Georgia's situation, and I've spoken to these people, and I to an extent, I know Jalen Walker and Mykel Williams, and I've had conversations with them. I know what kind of people they are, and I'm around that. So full disclosure, obviously, if you've been watching our videos for the last couple of years, or since I've been around, you probably know I'm a big Falcons fan, and I always have been. And I'm not. Bear with me. I'm not always like, oh man, why aren't they drafting Georgia guys? Why aren't they doing this and this? I do think mistakes have been made, and there's been some instances where they should draft a Georgia player. But I'm not here like banging on the drum for the Falcons to draft a Georgia player every year. There's some instances where, yes, I agree with that, but it's not always the thing that makes the most sense. When it comes to this draft, there's a lot of good defensive talent. And you can't really go wrong, and there's all sorts of different players that you want. But part of why I would push Georgia to say, hey, if Jalen Walker's there at 15, if Mykel Williams is there at 15, Malachi Starks is there at 15, you have to at least highly consider them and potentially pull the trigger on drafting one of them. Because of the personalities, because of the mentalities, and because they came from this Kirby Smart-led program that is focused on a machine, the machine of trying to win football games. It's what we tabbed Kirby a machine a few years ago, that Georgia football is a machine. So as a Falcons fan, I'm saying, hey, Go get one of those dudes this year, particularly because they need defensive help. But the other part is, if you're trying to start a franchise, if you're trying to get things going with a franchise, if you're an NFL franchise that's trying to change the culture, that's trying to go from losing to winning, that you feel like you need that extra step, getting players like Jalen Walker, Malachi Starks, Michael Williams, who all they cared about the last few years was Georgia. It wasn't just about the NFL. It was about leading a team, and it was about fighting through injury. All those guys played through injury, especially Michael Williams played through injury. Michael Williams didn't have to do that. He wasn't super productive anyway. He could have just sat out and ended up being a first or second round pick regardless. Instead, he fought through injuries. Jalen Walker, what did they do with him? Hey, you're a linebacker. No, you're an edge rusher. No, you're an off-ball linebacker. No, you're going to play some star here now. What did they do with Malachi Starks? Hey, you're going to be a starter as a true freshman. Hey, Malachi, you're going to play star this year. Hey, Malachi, you need to play a little bit of corner at this spot. All of these guys are versatile. All of them are very talented. These are just the first-round guys. Obviously, this, to me, it goes for other players in Georgia's draft. But these are the ones that have been around Georgia the last few years as former five-stars and former big-time recruits that came to Georgia, and it was about more than themselves. You want that in your locker room. The Philadelphia Eagles went out and did that. You don't even have to. That's one of the primary examples. Howie Roseman, Eagles higher up, who's making all these draft selections, went to Florida. He's a Gator. And he's drafting Georgia Bulldogs over and over. He just signed Azeez Ojulari. He added another one. Why? It's not just because they're really good football players. It's because they understand what it takes to win. Part of that is because they've been contributing to national championships. That's going to stop if Georgia doesn't win the national championship here in the next year or two. But they will at least have come from a program that's about winning and from an NFL pipeline. I think about what the Houston Texans GM and coaches said last year after they drafted Kamari Lassiter, the corner, in the second round out of Georgia. And they just talked about how ready he was, how he was pro-ready, that there wasn't much that they need to teach him. Part of that is because he came from, and Kamari Lassiter is one of those guys that you didn't need to teach him how to compete. You didn't need to teach the fire with Kamari Lassiter. He brought that energy. He was smacking his head after every tackle he made. He was, to a certain level, a little crazy on the football field. He had that extra edge. And he also understood the X's and O's, and he also understood what it took to win and to be selfless. And those are the things that Kirby gets praised for. It's over and over, and they said that he is one of the best developers when it comes, especially in the secondary, and obviously he's a former secondary player himself, that he did that at the University of Georgia. But the thing with that is that they all come in NFL ready, and part of that is a mentality. It's not just the talent. So I think that Todd McShay is very tapped in. Whether you like Todd McShay or not, whether you like what he said about Jalen Carter or not, he's very tapped in, and he knows what's going on with a lot of NFL programs, and he knows a lot of people. And to have a lot of different guys come to him and speak so highly of Jalen Walker, he doesn't think Jalen Walker falls out of the top 10. In fact, he doesn't think Jalen Walker falls out of the top 8 or 9. He thinks he's going to go somewhere between 5 and 9. Okay, well, you're praising these guys so much. Why is Michael Williams slipping? Michael Williams is slipping because of testing and because of injury concern. He's not slipping because of the character or because of the talent. Why won't, if Jalen Walker's just as good as projected top 3 pick and other edge rusher Abdul Carter, why is he not projected to go up there? Because there's probably going to be a quarterback or two taken early. Because Travis Hunter is a generational type of player, and he's going to be taken early. So there's circumstances for why the Georgia guys might not go top 4 or 5 in this draft, but there's going to be at least 2 of them, and I think there's going to be 3 of them taken in the first round. And the thing that they've got in common, versatility, heart, and pro-ready. And all of these guys are praising Kirby, basically, when they're talking about these types of guys. And Kirby said, these are the guys he wants to recruit. He doesn't want to have to teach them this. He wants it to be natural. When you look through the draft process, you learn a lot about certain college football programs. It's not something I'm learning, but hopefully I could bring you a little tidbit there. Thank you for watching.